Hey, welcome to another episode of Wholesaling the Cool Way. We're the Cools, Mark Cool and my son Jasper Cool, and we have wholesaling businesses. We both work in the North Carolina market, but Jasper lives in Arizona now. And so we get together on Sundays and talk about our businesses and what's happening and just invite others into the conversation. Normally, we start off with whatever we've been reading or listening to, or what's inspired us or what we've learned from for the week. So, Jasper, you got anything for that this week?
Yeah, definitely. We were talking about the Olympics offline, so I won't really touch on that. But I've really enjoyed watching a bunch of track and field and basketball. So if anyone hasn't watched the Olympics, definitely catch some recaps. That was really fun to watch. Some amazing upsets and comebacks and just amazing athletics. So that was really fun.
Yeah.
But besides that, I listened to this podcast with this dude named Michael Smith this week. That was really inspiring for me. He's a wholesaler and they are just crushing it. And he's got a pretty small team. I think he shared that he's up to like 5 acquisition managers now, but he just recently hired like I think three of those people. So he's been crushing with like 2 acquisition managers and I think one dispo manager and one like TC admin person, I think, and then him. I think that's it. And then like obviously VAs and stuff to cold call and stuff, but that's like his core team. And they've been crushing. He said they did something like 800 something in the first quarter, 600 something in the second quarter. And I think he's gonna do 300 like this month when they're on the podcast. And just really inspiring because he's crushing it with such a small team. And he's doing completely opposite of what of what I'm doing. So it's interesting. All they're doing is just massive inbound marketing. So they're doing direct mail, they're doing radio ads, they're doing TV ads, and I think he might be doing billboards as well. But just like Google ads, TV ads, radio ads, and direct mail, and like I said, possibly billboards. But everything's inbound, and so that's the second person now I've listened to. It's actually the same podcast, same like podcast host, but second person I've listened to in a row where they're doing like all inbound stuff. And the last lady I think I shared last week, she only needs 40 leads a week to get 4 contracts a week. I thought that was super impressive. And then she's doing like $8 million off of 40 leads a week. And I'm just like, wow. And then this dude is doing a lot more leads than that, but he's still cranking very impressive numbers. So I was impressed by that. And he broke down kind of his sales process and stuff. And pretty cool. And also he's in Ohio, which is not as crazy as like Phoenix area, but there's a lot of gurus that are in Ohio, and it seems like a very popular wholesaling state. And so he's still managing to crush within that market that a bunch of other people are in. So it's pretty cool to see. Got a bunch of good takeaways from that. And then
Yeah,
um,
it's probably not a high dollar amount market either, right? It's not like price points aren't super high there.
yeah, and that's another cool thing he shared it because like the gurus are I'll just call them gurus, but the people that are in Ohio market, they always preach that especially Tiffany and Josh High, if you ever listen to their stuff, they preach that like you can't just wholesale because the wholesale fees there are very small, 10 to 15 grand. And if you're just wholesaling, you're gonna not have like a good ROI and you're gonna probably end up going out of business. So that's what their strategy is to flip and subject to and do all kinds of stuff. But for him, they kind of are mostly just wholesaling, and his average fee is like 22 or 23,000 in a market where most other people are 10 to 15. So they're clearly doing something right. And
Yeah, the median home price is probably like in the 200s, right?
yeah, or
Probably.
less. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's obviously doing something right. And I think, what he shared that he thinks it is just building a brand. And he said that they get a lot of deals because sellers will call in on their ads. And one of their first questions is like, why'd you call in today? Or like, how'd you find us? And he said a lot of times the sellers would just be like, well, I was so grateful that you didn't call me 10 times a day. I'm so tired of those people that are calling me all the time. And so they actually like that they're not doing cold calling and stuff. So that's working for them. But it was interesting. But yeah, I think it was that. And then I finished Buy Back Your Time, that book by Dan Martell. I really like that one. And yeah, man, I think that's about it for me. Yeah. One of the things that Dan shared that I really liked was just like self-identity, self-belief thing, which is that I think many people have said this before, but he says that you're not ever going to earn a penny more than you think you deserve.
Mm,
And one of the things he said that really hit me, because I've heard that quote before, but he said, think about what's been your income over the past couple of years on average, and then half that. And would you act any differently if your income was suddenly cut in half? And the answer is absolutely. And so he's like, why don't you get that aggressive when your income is just the same, staying the same? You need to like have that mind frame and really get aggressive to increase your self-belief and your income and everything.
yeah, that's a good point.
Because it's very true. It's like if your income was cut in half, or for example, like I know for me, when we have like a really big dip or a bad month or something, I'm like, oh my gosh. And
Yeah,
the next month is always really big.
yep.
The next month is always really big. And so I'm like, why can't I just always do that? So it's a
Same
good
here.
reminder.
Yeah, like we just had our
Yeah,
biggest month I shared last time
yeah,
in July, right? Because we
yeah,
had such a bad, really a bad second quarter overall.
yeah,
So now we're just like going for it.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I always notice that, like whether it's a bad month or bad quarter or even like a bad year, the next year is always a bounce back or the next month or the next quarter. So it's interesting. You gotta just always,
it's a
take
weird
it
human
places.
nature thing as you get comfortable with a certain level, and you'll fight to
Yeah,
maintain the level. But yeah, how do you expand into the next level?
yeah. So that was a good thing for me to think about. I need to remember that definitely. And even though if we have like an average or a decent month, I need to make sure that I'm still, pressing on the gas and make sure that I don't dip down. So yeah, I
Yeah,
really like that book though. So
part of that's just getting out of your comfort zone, like we've talked about, like hiring an executive assistant. That's not comfortable, but it's going to expand your business, right?
yeah,
Or doing a different marketing channel or bringing on more staff if it's time. Like for me, that's one of my challenges. I've been procrastinating bringing on the next acquisitions person in a way, and I need to just do that. And you know, so it's a good point. I
yeah,
mean, that's my take on it. Is like part of it is expanding your comfort zone, staying at the edge of your comfort zone, not just staying in your comfort zone and then going, oh, I've got to maintain my comfort zone. I just slip below it, rather than
yeah,
like constantly being at the top edge of your comfort zone and being like, well, here's the edge. Can I push it a little bit and expand that comfort zone so that now my new normal is, you know, higher than where it was.
yeah,
The
definitely.
Olympic athletes are a great example of that, like you just talked about as inspiration. Those
I
people
know.
are looking to add, shave tenths of seconds or hundreds of seconds off their times.
Yeah,
And it's a lot of work.
yeah, yeah. But that's it for me. If anyone's interested, it's called "Buy Back Your Time" by Dan Martell. I really like that book. So yeah, but that's it.
Yeah, it seems like you got a lot of good takeaways from that. Sounds good.
Yeah,
Yeah, for me, it's the Olympic athletes. I watched a lot of Olympics this week, and it's really inspiring to see those people work really hard and get results, and you know, just performing on the biggest stage, and the dedication and discipline it takes, inspiring. So that's one of my big ones this week. And otherwise, I don't know if I can even share about. I'm continuing to uh, listen to this ebook. I'm still reading poetry at night, which is good for me right now. And then listening to this ebook, the Drunkard's Walk, which is about randomness and probability. And it's pretty dense. So I don't know if I can even share takeaways from it, but it's interesting to expand my brain around probability. One of the people I really like to listen to and I really respect as a thinker is Naval Ravikant. So if you haven't checked him out, I recommend him. But one of the things he says is to like be a well-rounded person and to grow your success and your prosperity and everything. You should understand game theory and probability. And so this book has a lot about probability in it, and some of it's kind of mind blowing for me, and it's still kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around um, everything that they're going through. So I might even go back and listen to it again. But just like an example, I'll see if I can give an example of like 10 comes up more often than 9 when rolling dice. And you wouldn't think that's true because the combinations to get those two numbers, the same number of combinations would get those two numbers, right? You can get like for a 10, you get a 6 and a 4, or a 5 and a 5, or a 4 and a 6. And there's three, right? And the 9 is the same thing. You can get a 6 and a 3, a 5 and a 4, and a You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
4 and a 4 and a 5, right? But there's probability in there of each combination coming up differently. I think he was talking about 3 dice, but like anyway, it's mind-blowing stuff. It's just like, well, getting 3 ones isn't the same as getting, whatever. I can't even go into it right now. It's blowing my mind, but it's just like you would stuff that you would think is common sense, of like, oh, obviously that's a 1 in 3 chance. Well, no, it's not, because this combination only has a 10% chance, but this combination has a 30% chance, and you have to like really think out of the box. He's talking about this guy, like Renaissance era Italian guy, who wrote one of the first books on probability and gambling, and how he made a living at it, because he was one of the first people to figure out that it wasn't just pure chance, that there were odds. And yeah, it's just really interesting, all this stuff. I don't think I can give you any takeaways, but
How's it
it's
go?
called The Drunkard's Walk, and I'll probably have to go back through it, because it is good to understand how probability works, and how it's kind of like one of those things that's on the surface seems obvious, but then when you go below the surface, it's like, oh, it's not obvious. And that's why this Renaissance guy basically put himself through medical school gambling on dice, because he was one of the first people to see it's not just chance, and he knew the odds. And so he would go throw dice with guys like all the time and make money, and then he put himself through medical school, and it's just crazy.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, anyway, that's about all. It's not super clear, but it's an interesting book, and I'm only like 3 or 4 chapters in. There's a lot of stuff. It's got a lot of information in there about randomness and probability. So
Yeah.
if you want to expand your brain, it's a good one. Uh, but yeah, I think that's all I've got as far as what I've been consuming. I haven't done a lot of pods this week. I've been actually kind of listening to the like Bill Simmons talk about the Olympic basketball team and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
uh, that's all right. Olympics only comes once every 4 years, so it's fun to take it in. But yeah, let's shift gears into business stuff. Let's do any business check-in you want to do, as far as KPIs or results you had this week, victories, challenges, or anything you learned. And I had a couple of topics I thought of just to have come up through the course of my week, like working with real estate agents and the 14-page contract, JV deals. Some of these things I might check in about on mine, but um, if you have any topics that might be of service to people who are listening, feel free to expound on them.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just run through mine and then we can bring up what you mentioned at the end if you want to go into it a little
Yeah,
bit.
we can just go into it at the end a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. Cool. So I'll run through pretty quickly here. So this week we got 106 leads, 110 offers went out. So that's good for us. Pretty much on par with most weeks. We're usually right around from 100 to 120 in leads, and usually somewhere between 80 and 100 in offers. So usually around there. So it's a good week for us. And then we did get one closing this week. We sold 5 deals and we got 4 contracts. So it's a good week.
Wow, that's a great
Yeah,
week.
thank you. Thank you. But yeah, it was a good week this week. And it was exciting because Josh is about I guess he's about 2 weeks in now, I think. Or actually maybe this is his first week. I think this is his first full week. Either way, doesn't matter.
Uh,
I think
well,
he's like eight
you
days.
had to deal with the power outage in the Philippines the previous week, so he didn't work a full week.
Yeah, he missed 3 days so far. So I think we're about a week in working days together. Either way, it's felt like a long time because I feel like we've made a lot of progress. And so it's been awesome this week. He's been helping me a bunch, crushing it with investor lift and generating a lot of buyer interest for these deals. Like we've gotten, I should pull that up real quick just to compare before and after I hired Josh. So if we look at this in July, I hired him at the end of July, I believe. I had to double check. But like I said, it's been about a week, so I think I hired him right at the end of July. And so just put this in comparison. In July, I received 23 offers. Now, that might be incorrect because it's me and I don't always enter all the data into Podio every time I get an offer, so that's part of why I hired him. But sometimes when people text me an offer or I'm on a phone call and they give me an offer, I don't end up entering that in Podio. So there might be some human error there. But anyways, we're going with the data. 23 offers in July, right? For a full month from buyers on our properties, and 26 offers in the first week of August. So
Wow.
if we keep
Yeah.
that pace up, then I would get 100 incoming offers on our deals as opposed to 23. That's a 4x, and I'm sure it's going to equal more revenue and more sold
Oh
deals,
yeah,
you know.
absolutely. Yeah.
So that's just a huge victory for me to look at that.
That's
And
amazing.
on the main deal, like not this week, but the first week when he started, we only had one deal that was ready for dispo that time. And so he got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. He got 9 offers on that in 2 days. And that's huge. You know, for me, it's like I don't think I've done that before, unless it's like a really hot deal. And this deal wasn't a great deal. You know, it's still like we're probably going to lock it up on Monday, but it's not a home run deal by any means. And so for him to get 9, I think we have more than that now, but 9 offers in the first 2 days on that deal is very
That's
impressive.
crazy.
And so it's a kudos to him, but it's also kudos to investor base. So if anyone's not signed up for that, I would definitely recommend it. But we found a lot of new legit buyers from it over the past couple of weeks,
It's a game
and
changer. Yeah.
since signing up as well. But he's been really crushing it. I wasn't using it as much as I should have, so he's been really crushing it. And then we found, or he found, a new cool little SMS like extension that you can use for Chrome, and you do have to pay for it, but it's called Dial My Calls if anyone's interested. But you sign up for it, it's free to sign up. They give you 25 like texts for free to try it out. And basically, it's just an extension because I told him, I was like, I want something super simple that we can go in investor base, export all the data for one specific deal, put together a brief text message for that deal, and then blast it out to all the buyers that are in that area in investor base. So we're not having to reach out to them one by one. And so he found this thing, and we're going to try it out next week. So I'm excited about that
Cool.
too. Yeah, you can do RVMs and stuff too, but we're just going to do text because I think, you know, I was doing it myself and then he was doing it like manually, just texting everybody and calling everybody. But it's just like there's got to be a better way. So hopefully this thing will work, and then we can just text blast everyone once, and then we can just follow up with calls if they don't get back to us. So that's what I'm going to try next week. Uh, but yeah, that was awesome. So a good week there on the sales side, and then
Yeah, it's great. 5 sales is huge.
yeah, and then also this week we had 3 properties that needed, or actually 2 properties that needed reduction, and we got a huge reduction on one of them, $25,000 price reduction. And then on the other one, the dude totally declined. I have my acquisitions doing it now. He totally declined, and he was a little bit pissed. And then he reached out to me yesterday, just out of the blue. Like we kind of wrote him off, set a follow up in a couple months because he was pretty pissed. And we signed the termination and all that stuff. And then he reached out to me yesterday, and he countered at 160, and we had offered him 150 on the renegotiation. So I think there might still be a deal there. So that's pretty exciting. It might be 2 for 2 on renegotiation this week. So that's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, the one challenge there is I feel like I've shared this before, but I've told my team that we need to slow down going forward and really get some more information on these houses, because I've noticed we've been doing more renegotiations, which part of that is buyers are just kind of being more conservative these days because the market's kind of slowing down. But part of it's we're not doing the best job on acquisitions, so we need to
Yeah.
tighten that up.
Just means we need to be more conservative too.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's always, you know, like with this specific property, it's tenant occupied, so even the seller didn't necessarily know the condition. So there's always that as well. But
Yeah.
I think we just need to do a little bit better job digging in deeper and getting bigger discounts and stuff. Because one thing that guy said on the podcast that I thought was, you know, common sense, but also like smart, is he said we never have any problem selling the 50K deals, right? Like when you get a massive discount on a deal, it's never hard to sell those. But when you're taking this deal where you're like, oh yeah, like this looks like a pretty good one. I think we can make, you know, 10 or 15 on it. Those are the ones where you end up making zero, and then you have to renegotiate, and then you never can sell it, and it takes 2 weeks to sell. And it's just like, so it's a good like reminder for me, like, okay, I need to continue to go after bigger deals. I need to remind myself every day, go after bigger deals, go after big deals.
Yeah, it's
Because
better to do fewer deals that have a profit built in than to be chasing the ones that are really tight, because those,
yeah,
it's like you said, they take more time too. You're
yeah,
having to beat the bushes more to try and find somebody who's going to take it, and it's just a
yeah,
drain.
yeah. And I found myself too, because like I've found that I like vacant properties much better. So now I found myself when it is vacant, I'll come up on price a little bit because I'm like, well, it's vacant, and then
Yeah,
still don't end up selling it. So I just need to stick to my guns. But another victory for me has been not running numbers on these properties. Obviously I shared Josh was out a couple of days this week because his birthday one day and then power outage another day. But for the other days, he's crushing it with offers. And it was really scary for me to hand that off at first because I'm like, man, are we going to lock up like bad deals? Are the offers going to be so low or something like either they're going to be off one way. Like, are we going to lock up bad deals because he's offering too high? Or are we gonna offer way too low and not get any contracts? But we got 4 contracts this week, and that's him doing offers 100%. So
that's
that
great.
was exciting, and it was a comfort stretch for me for sure to hand that off to him because it's like it's kind of the lifeblood of your business is like comping properties. Because if you do it wrong, like we just talked about, you're not going to sell your deals, and or if you do it really wrong, go too low, you're not going to get any contracts. So it's like finding that sweet balance is difficult, and he's doing a good job. So that's awesome.
That's great.
And also the buy box thing that I made a while back has really been awesome. And I just added a lead status for us in Podio. This doesn't fit our buy box, and we just select that anytime, it doesn't fit our buy box. And that's been like also scary for me because I'm like, man, I'm just like throwing away these leads. And it's like a mental thing where I'm like, I'm just wasting money, but really I'm not because I waste more money by spending my team's time on these leads that aren't going to work for us. So now we just try to cut it immediately. Like just look up the address online, do a quick underwrite. Okay, it's this size or it's this, like if it's too expensive, just immediately doesn't fit buy box. If there's no comps, immediately doesn't fit buy box. Like it's just these quick things. And then if it checks all those boxes, we'll actually run numbers. But that's been helpful too. And I think it's saved a lot of time for everybody. So that's been good.
Yeah, it's still something I haven't done that I want to do. It's on my list.
Yeah. But yeah, I would definitely recommend that. It's been awesome.
Yeah,
It's
we
been
have some
great.
parameters, but we just need to more clearly define them
Yeah.
and have them codified in a document.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think that's about it for victories and everything. Um, for challenges, that deal I closed was super challenging. It was a super tiny deal, and the tiny deals are always the worst ones. And so I locked it up months ago when I was still doing tenant occupied properties. And of course, the seller wouldn't let us see the property after we locked it up. And so then we still sold it despite that. And we were going to make a decent profit. I think it was like 10 to 15K, somewhere in there. And then the seller had like sold part of the land to the DOT and accepted 17,000 for the sale and didn't tell us any of that, didn't tell us that the land was going to be cut in half essentially. And so then I called him up and I was like, what's going on, dude? You won't let us see the house. You sold half your land, all this stuff. And anyways, he's an older guy, but he seemed like a nice guy and he came down on price because of that. I was like, cool. And so then I relayed that to the buyer, sold it. It was at a lesser price, but I think we were still making like 6 or 7 thousand on it. So I was like, okay, it's not the end of the world. And then we get down to closing this week, and the attorney's reaching out to the seller, and she said, "Oh, he changed his mind. He doesn't want to sell." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And so then I call him up, and he's like, "Yeah, like I'm not selling that property right now." And I'm like, "Well, we're already closing on the property tomorrow, and we have a contract. So, like, what's going on, dude?" And long story short, he comes back around, but he won't honor the price renegotiation that we did. So he doesn't honor that at all. And so then that shrinks my profit to like basically $1,000. And then we're supposed to close on Tuesday, and Ashley sent him the e-sign like 5 times, and he just wouldn't e-sign it, but he kept opening it every time, and it's just won't e-sign it. Then we get to Friday. He literally signed all the seller docs on Monday, right? And he didn't sign the HUD because the tenants aren't paying rent. So he was mad that there were prorations of the rent on there. And then he waits until Friday and drives all the way to Raleigh and signs the HUD in her office. And so the buyer's funds are just sitting there since Tuesday, and he wouldn't click one button to sign the e-sign. He had to drive. It was just insane.
Mm,
So this seller has like 20 other properties. I will send him to you if you want, but I'm not interested in working with this guy again. It was just insane, insane to work with this dude. And so that's a good lesson for me, though. Sometimes the painful lessons are the good ones. So I just need to not buy tenant occupied properties ever, and make sure I have a healthy margin on every deal. And if it's going to be $1,000, just terminate the deal. Just not even do it. But
Well, and the other thing is, and I tell my team this is like, we deserve to work with people who are easy to work with, who treat us with respect, and if
yeah,
somebody's going to be a real pain or disrespectful, then we don't have to work with them. Like, there are more deals out there.
yeah,
So, like, when somebody starts running you through the ringer, then it might be time to just cut bait and just be like, okay, enough.
yeah, yeah. And that's the only unfortunate thing of wholesaling. And so that's why like I'll end up pushing through on these deals that I don't want to close because it was just me as a buyer. I would just do that. I was just like
Right.
never.
Yeah. When you
But
got
this
another
dude,
party involved. Yeah.
yeah, it's like this dude, he sent in his deposit, he sent in his money like early. He was a great buyer. He did everything he was supposed to do. And then
Yeah.
this guy just totally wanted to give us a hard time.
Yeah.
And then also, this was kind of a tricky property with title work and stuff. So if I had canceled, I would have to pay those fees and stuff. So I was like, I'll just take it. It's better to make a little bit of money than have to come out of pocket. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
That's true. That extra person in place. I mean, we do the same thing on the flip side where we buy deals sometimes because we already made a promise to the seller and the buyer's being flaky. And then, you
yeah,
know, um, then we hope that the buyer comes through or that we find another buyer. And, I mean, I don't usually buy a deal unless it's a pretty strong chance we're going to close one way or another. We know it's a good property, but still it's frustrating when you have, like you said, with wholesaling, you have three parties involved, us, the buyer and the seller, and then somebody's being difficult and messes
yeah,
it up for everybody else.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's part of why we make money, high level problem solving, right? That's what they say about
That's
real
right.
estate investing.
Yeah, that's right. But that was just complaining. So I apologize for anyone listening. But the takeaway is what you said, which is that you don't have to work with people that are difficult to work with or maybe a pain in the butt. You deserve to work with good people. And there's millions of properties across America that you can do deals with. So you don't have to
Yeah.
work with this frustrating people.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't see the signs early. So then you're stuck in the middle of a deal with people, which is challenging.
Yeah, exactly. But that's it. Appreciate you listening. That's it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. But overall, a great week.
Yeah, great week. It's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll jump in and look through what we did this week. I know we got a bunch of contracts this week. It's interesting that you say that about the guy with the 40 leads and four contracts or whatever, because we're in that same ballpark. I mean, we
Yeah.
do somewhere between 40 and 60 leads a week, and obviously we're doing a lot of land, so that's a different contract to lead to contract ratio there. But yeah, let's see. We got one, two, three. I, I'm just looking at our Slack because we have a thread there. Yeah, we got three vacant lots this week, and then Jasper, when we were chatting offline, I had another one that somebody just signed a deal on. So yeah, we got four contracts this week if you count the one that came in today.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's all vacant land, but again, we're doing that on somewhere between 40 and 60 leads, depending on um, how you calculate it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, we get cold caller leads. We get. I was just looking at this contract to see what it is. We get cold calling leads, and we get SMS leads are our primary channels right now. But
Hmm.
we're talking offline too about other channels, and we can touch on that a little bit today too. We're probably going to go back into some direct mail a little bit here. Part of that is because we're saving money on SMS because we are filtering everything, and our lists we're not filtering, we're not buying the same data. We're buying much smaller data set after we filter out people we've already reached out to. So that's saving us money on skip tracing and list buying. So we're going to put some of that money towards direct mail. And now that we've done so much SMS, we know where our hot markets are. So we're just going to do smaller, more targeted campaigns to areas that we're doing really well in.
Yeah.
And direct mail. And like you were talking about with this wholesaler, inbound marketing is really nice. I was talking to my acquisitions manager this week about it, and it's just like, it's nice when people call you and they want to sell their property,
Yeah.
that's instead of like trying to chase people around. So that was my model for the first 2 years or so that I was in business. It was all direct mail and we did really well with it. And then, the cost per lead went way up because a ton of people are jumping into the North Carolina market. But like I said, if we can target smaller campaigns to hot markets for us, I think it's going to still work for us. So I can report back on that. We're going to probably jump into that this coming week.
Mhm.
So yeah, we got 4 contracts this week. I think we sold 1 or 2. Let's see, we sold. Yeah, we sold that one. We sold that one. Trying to see the dates here on these. Friday, August 2nd, Monday, August 5th. So we sold Moss, Ledford, Belford, Mistral. We sold 3.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, and then we did. I think Derek reached out to you about New Western. Maybe we shouldn't
Yeah.
mention the name, but Derek reached out to you about a big wholesaler, and we went under contract with them. But as you know, they have a weird 5-day. We'll see if we can sell it or find a buyer thing before they actually commit. So
Yeah.
we went under contract on a house that we have that has a tree through the roof, um, which isn't a great. Like we've had trouble. We've had a lot of buyers go look at it, and we haven't gotten the offers we wanted to get on it. We got a price reduction on it. It wasn't a big price reduction, but it was enough to, create a little bit more interest and some second looks. But we still didn't really get a buyer. So it's weird because I was like, okay, I was going to tell Derek, my brother, our dispo manager, on Monday of last week, hey, let's just reach out to New Western on this one, bite the bullet, and it's kind of a last resort thing. And he had been talking with somebody who he thought was a buyer, but it turns out they're a wholesaler, and they're basically just trying to wholesale deals to New Western. So they're like, their business model is find deals and then get New Western to buy them from them and make a wholesaling fee. So at that point, Derek had already made a commitment to this guy for a price, and so we couldn't go directly to New Western ourselves because of integrity, because he had already committed to this guy. So he was having to dance around with a JV deal with a guy who didn't really seem to know much about what he was doing, and just to do a deal with New Western, which we were going to do anyway. So,
Yeah.
um, but anyway, so technically we have 4 sold. We have 3 sold with actual buyers with contracts directly with us, and then we have this other one that, as you know, they'll take 5 days and then they'll tell us if they can do something, and then maybe ask us for a price reduction too if they can't. So that's kind of like a sort of sold in my mind.
Yeah.
So not a real sold.
Yeah.
But it's good. Like I said, I'm focused on the positive. We sold 3, and that's awesome. And I think, let's see, yeah, one of these was for neighbor letters, which I've talked about in the past on podcasts, but I'll just talk about it briefly. We send neighbor letters when we have vacant land, and we just pull up all the neighbors that have property touching the property we have, or maybe even a couple of people across the street. We send them an actual letter using a service called Postal Methods, which is a real easy to use service. And um, it's amazing how many deals we've sold to neighbors over the years. I don't have the stats on it in front of me, but it's pretty awesome. And one of these deals is a neighbor letter sale. So the people next door wanted the property. They don't want a house built there. They want to, expand their property. And we locked down a deal with them, and it's really easy. So the first thing we do when we get a land deal is we just send out the neighbor letters. That's the first one, because we might just get a call from somebody like, yeah, I want that lot. And then we go on our normal marketing after that. So it's a
Yeah.
valuable thing if you're dealing with land. Not probably as much with houses, but I think it's a great method with land. Learned that from Jack Bosch, one of the original land gurus. And yeah, so three sold. I'm almost certain we didn't close anything this week, but we have some closings lined up, which is great.
Sweet.
Yeah. Oh, well, this one closed on Monday, but it was supposed to close last week. So I guess we did close one. Uh, yeah, so we closed one deal. And that one was a weird one with corner lot with an old gas station that was run down. Somebody had converted the upstairs of it into an apartment, and then there's like a garage and a shed, and so it had a lot of possibilities, and it was zoned commercial. We ended up selling to a guy whose mom lived in the neighborhood. He's a carpenter and he wants to go fix it up. And I think we found him on Facebook Marketplace actually. But it was a tricky one to sell, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But and we ended up selling it and closing it, so that's great. Um, yeah, and other than that, I don't have any other KPIs in front of me, but we're in process with getting our KPIs at my fingertips on the homepage of our Podio. So um, that's exciting. We're actually going to have everything just sitting there the way I've wanted it to be for a long time. But yeah, so those are victories. I was going to just touch on a couple things too, because one of the sales we did this week, actually, I guess they didn't mark that as a sale here. Let me see. Yeah, this other one we actually signed a contract on too. So that's 4 sales and 5 if you include the big wholesaler this week. But I went back and forth on this one, and this is just a topic I was going to touch on is like working with agents, right? Because we get this in the wholesaling world, and there are different wrinkles that come up when you work with real estate agents. And one of the big ones is that because they're agents and they're working with a broker, they have to use a 14-page contract. And we've talked about this in the past, but it can be really challenging because every agent does it differently, or every brokerage has different ideas about how it should work. Everyone has different levels of familiarity with wholesaling, or understanding of it and comfort level with it. So this one, what agents will do sometimes is they'll pull the seller's name and they'll put it on the offer to purchase, and then you have to go back to them and say, well, we want to have our name on there, and then we'll do an addendum for an assignment. Some agents will really dig their heels in and be like, no, you need to get the seller to sign this. And usually I say, no, we're not going to get the seller to sign this. We're going to sign this as seller, and we're going to click the assignment uh, addendum box on the like one of the last pages, and we're going to have an addendum that says this is an assignment, and you're going to take over our contract. But I just wanted to touch on that and see what your experience is with it too, Jasper, because it can be, like I said, I spent way too much time and energy on this, so it's one of those things I need to have a process map and a protocol for my team with. Like when we get an agent buyer or an agent representing a buyer, and they want to come in and use this contract, which most of the time they do, what's our protocol? What do we say yes to? What do we say no to? And I think where I'm settling in now is that you put us as the buyer. You can put us as buyer slash assigner if you want to, and we'll do an addendum that says an assignment. We're not going to go get the seller to sign this offer to purchase and say that, have them sign a working with agents disclosure and all this shit. It's just not happening. And I
Yeah,
feel like that's kind of where I'm drawing my line in the sand, because it feels like it's just giving away too much control of the deal to do it that way.
yeah,
Um, and it's frustrating because sometimes your only buyer is either an agent buyer or a buyer who's buyer who's represented by an agent, and so then you feel like you have to play ball. But I've done it a few times where I've just said, no, we're not doing the deal if we can't do it our way, and they usually will say, okay, we'll do it your way. But sometimes
yeah,
you have to be staunch in your position, which is a little bit scary sometimes when you don't have any other buyers interested. So anyway, you got any thoughts about that?
yeah. It's tricky. I don't really work with agents at all, but if I do, it's just using my agreement, and I just have the buyer pay them like a fee, so that I'm not
You don't
involved.
even do that. You don't do the 14-page OTP.
No, no, I've never done that. I just don't like doing it.
Yeah, I don't either.
But
Like for example, this buyer was like, I don't know what their reason was, but like it's a husband and wife team, and the wife is a broker, and the husband goes through her every time, and so she needs to run it through her brokerage, and that's why they need to do this thing. So I was trying to, be flexible and be a team player, but we went back and forth, and it took us nearly a week to get the purchase agreement signed, because I sent them ours and I was like, well, hey, just look at ours, because this is how we do it. And it's pretty simple, and we
yeah,
can put the assignment right in there. And they're like, oh, no, 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 we got to do it, this other one. And I was like, oh. So, but I was frustrated this week because it took up a bunch of my time and energy to figure it out and to go back and forth with them about it. And So I need to just have a policy. So that's interesting that you just don't even do it. Because we could, I proposed it, but I didn't give them a hard line about it. I was like, look at ours. This is what ours looks like. Why don't you do that?
Yeah.
And they were like, no, 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 we have to do it our way. But I've done it before where I've said, no, I'm not doing that 14 page. I'm just, we only work with our agreement. And,
Yeah.
um, but then there's also the fear, like what comes up for me is the fear of like somebody going, well, screw you. I'm going to go direct to seller and, try and do a deal with the seller because
Yeah.
we won't play ball their way. So like I had that in the works this week as I was going through this process of like, well, if I just really play hardball with these people, they already have the seller's name. They researched it. They could reach out to them and try and do a deal with them and offer them a few grand less than we are. And some sellers will do that. Right. So
Yeah.
then it's just a question of what's the integrity of the person you're dealing with. And fortunately, these people, have a high level of integrity and we got it done and figured it out. But anyway, I just wanted to touch on that and, mention to people who maybe haven't come across it that it's coming up, or even if you deal with this, put it in the comments what you normally do, because it'd be interesting for us and for other people. Um, we're, and not every agent's created equal. Like Jasper, we were just on a call with Matt Larson this week, and he said something like, I do some stuff with agents, and like 10% of agents are great, and the other 90% are crap. Basically, is what he
Yeah.
said.
Definitely.
And that's true too, because it's similar to wholesaling where you get a lot of agents. I mean, there's stats in the real estate industry, and I don't know what they are, but I think it's somewhere like 10 to 20% of the agents are doing 90% of the deals, right? And then all these other
Yeah.
people just have licenses and they're muddling around trying to do something and never really figure it out. So if you run into those people, then you're going to run into some frustration. If you run into like A players who are doing a lot of deals, then probably you can work it out with them and it'll be fine. But
Yeah.
so it's kind of like knowing who you're dealing with too. And I guess you can research real estate agents and see how many transactions they're doing, or see, I think there's a way to do that, or you know, go through your network and say, hey, do you know this agent? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all I had on that topic. I just want to touch on it, and I guess on the heels of that is the JV thing, right? Because I just mentioned this JV thing that we're doing with another deal, and it's like you run into the same thing with JV partners. You get a lot of people who have watched a few videos on YouTube or listened to some podcasts or taken a course, and they're just trying to get into wholesaling and they don't really know what they're doing, and so they try and wholesale. Like uh, Derek, my dispo manager, was like, yeah, this guy was putting our deal on various Facebook groups and all over the web and giving out the address, which we don't do. And
Yeah.
so it's like, come on, dude, like get with the program, have some sense and ask us permission. So it's the same thing with JVs. I think, what's the percentage of JV partners that you've worked with, Jasper, that actually know what they're doing and are easy to work with versus people who just add complexity to your life and you leave the deal going, man, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's very, very small. I've probably done JV deals with like four people. It's probably you and my close friends. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't do JVs because for that exact reason. I just don't do them. Because for me, it's like for me, I guess it's a little bit different with land, but for me, if I can't sell it, I'll just give it to New Western. I don't want to do a JV. So that's what I do. But yeah, I mean, I try to exhaust all options myself first because that's frustrating. I'd be very frustrated if we get under a JV and all you're doing is posting on Facebook because I can do that. So it's like
Yeah.
if you're gonna do a JV, what
Well, this person was posting on Facebook and we didn't even
value
have a
are you gonna
JV
have?
agreement in
Maybe you
place.
have hedge funds or something I don't have access to. Maybe you have investor. Yeah,
We had a little audio lag. Yeah.
yeah,
And so I think another lesson there is vetting your buyers, right? And this is something I've been working with my disposition team on, is like, know who your buyer is. Like, don't just jump into bed with them. Like, really talk to them, ask them questions, figure out. I mean, it only takes a few minutes talking to somebody to know if they know what they're doing or not. And
yeah,
sometimes I think, our dispo team will rush in too fast because they're trying to sell a deal and they're, like think there's a real buyer, but it's like, take your time, figure out who this person is before you really start to go down the garden path with them and waste your time and our time and, you know,
yeah,
get us into a sticky situation. So I think that's a lesson. is really just vet your buyers. And it really only takes a couple of minutes and a few questions like, hey, how many deals are you doing? How long have you been doing this? What's your business model? Are you a flipper? Are you, a buy and hold? What are you doing? And, the answers to those questions will pretty much tell you everything about a buyer pretty fast,
Yeah,
so it
definitely.
doesn't take a lot.
Yeah,
And are you a wholesaler or are you, a principal? Like that's really simple.
yeah,
So I don't know. I guess this is part of our process of getting our SOPs in place and just being like, hey, when you talk to a new buyer, ask these 4 questions. I think I've done this before, but I guess we have to have it
yeah.
somewhere else where it's really obvious. So sorry if you guys are listening, Dispo team, but it's a little bit frustrating sometimes when we get into these situations. That's a deal where it's a last resort too. This was a last resort deal, so there's probably like trying to make a buyer work that maybe we shouldn't have tried to make work because they weren't real.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah,
That's tough when you get down to no options. But like with the realtor thing, like I work with a husband and wife team too, and it's the exact same situation that you have. And I just put in the assignment agreement that she'll get her commission at closing and the buyer will pay it. And that's what we do every time. So
yeah. I don't know. I don't know that this was even about the commission, but maybe that's just something their inner workings where they do pay internally a commission, and that somehow helps their numbers. But if they have business partners, probably it does. I think they do. They partner on a lot of their deals. So
yeah,
then when she gets her commission off the top, then the split with a business partner is a little different for them.
right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's all this stuff. I was going to mention one other deal that we're working on. I've mentioned this deal before, but just for a learning thing or something for people to comment or feedback on too is like flood zones has been an issue for us lately. We've had some properties with a flood zone. This one is on 6 acres and it's 2 lots, and one lot has an old house that's run down. We've already gotten a price reduction on this. We have a buyer, and there's two wrinkles. I think I mentioned this last week. There's a family cemetery, and then it's in a flood zone. And so what we've been finding lately is buyers are really not wanting to touch properties in flood zones. And it's not a black and white cut and dry thing when a property is in a flood zone, because some of these flood zones, like I think it's called an AE flood zone, it's like they call it a 500-year flood zone. Like there's a chance that it'll flood once every 500 years. And
Yeah.
so then the percentage chance of it flooding is like 0.025 or something crazy.
Yeah.
And you may have to pay a little bit extra on your homeowner's insurance for flood insurance. It might be like $60 a month or something. And occasionally in some of the flood zones, the local municipality will, say that your foundation has to be a certain height, like it has to be 3 feet or something, but it doesn't mean it's a deal breaker. And a lot of buyers, like they hear the two words flood zone and they're instantly out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like within our team, we've been trying to talk about this of like really educate them, really let them know it's a 500-year flood zone. It's a, 0.025% chance. And people hear those two words and they just like, they're like, I'm out, I'm done. And so yeah, I guess that's a thing that I just wanted to mention for people who are dealing, especially with land. Like this is a 6 acre lot with a house and everything, but it does have a flood zone touching it. And also the other thing is like sometimes you get a property with a flood zone and the flood zone touches like a back corner of the lot and it's like a, 5% of the lot or 10% of the lot. And it doesn't even affect the building, the home site. And people are like, flood zone, no. So it's like, we're
Yeah.
just really, I think internally with my business, we have to figure out a better way of presenting this situation because we want to be transparent and disclose like, hey, just so you know, this does have a flood zone, piece to it. But
Yeah.
but then they tune out before you can even say it's a 500-year flood zone. It's on the back 5% of the property. It doesn't affect the building site, this and that. People
Yeah.
tune you out as soon as they hear those words. So I think we need to figure out a better sort of script for broaching that with people and see if we can convert more buyers or at least have them actually look at it. And the other option is, like you said, with the buy box, we don't touch properties with flood zones because we're tired of dealing with this BS around it. But a lot of
Yeah.
them are really good properties. If you're looking at a 2 acre property and like the flood zone touches the back 2% of it, and it's a 500-year flood zone, and you've got a home site up by the road, then why wouldn't you do that deal? So anyway, I guess I'm venting, but also just putting something out there for conversation or for education for people who haven't dealt with it,
Yeah.
or any feedback. But you don't deal with a lot of this probably, so probably not a lot of feedback on it.
Yeah, I had a buyer ask me this week about a flood zone. I rarely get that question, but I did have to check it up. Did have to check on it. In Wilson County, it got hacked, so that was interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, their whole register of deeds and Go Maps and everything was down, so that was interesting.
So
But
could they not close deals and stuff?
yeah, absolutely not. But this property was in Wilson City, so I was able to get around it. But I first went to the county website and everything was shut down. But this one was in the city. So I didn't know that Wilson County and Wilson City have different GIS systems. So that's cool.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it doesn't come up often. I have one buyer, one buyer who asks me on every single deal when I send it out, is this property to flood zone? And I don't respond to him anymore, but yeah, I used to.
Some people, I guess, for their buy box, it's no flood zone no matter what. But all I'm saying is that there's a wide range. Like there's a flood zone where like the thing could flood once every whatever 10 years or something. But you obviously you wouldn't want to do that. But if it's a 500, or I think there's two classifications. There's like a 200-year and a 500-year flood zone. Neither of
Yeah.
those are very very worrisome, you know.
Yeah.
And especially if you put the thing on a 3-foot foundation or whatever, it's not a big deal. But anyway, we don't need to harp on it. I just wanted to throw it out there as a topic. Um, yeah,
Yeah. And for
yes.
people too, that could be a possible niche that you go after properties only in flood zones because I have sold land deals with flood zone, just like you're saying, it's not really a big deal. But yeah, that could be a good niche for somebody to go after. Just lots that do have flood zone, and hopefully you can find the ones that have the 200 500 year, and then you can sell
Yeah, because we do cancel some of those. If we get it and we get a bunch of buyers that are freaking out about a flood zone and we can't get anybody who's like serious, then a lot of times we cancel them because we just don't want
them. Yeah,
to chase buyers around for weeks on end trying to get somebody to understand that it's not a big deal. So
yeah,
yeah, it could be a niche for somebody.
yeah.
All right, anything else before we wrap?
I don't think so. No.
A good week for both of us. A bunch of contracts and sales, and we
Oh
had a
yeah.
close. We both had a closing actually. I forgot we had a closing. So
Rocking and rolling.
yeah, good start to the new what? The new quarter started now?
No,
July.
July.
July, August, September. So yeah, good start
Yeah,
to the second month of the quarter.
yeah,
Yep. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. If you've listened this far, and we really appreciate it. Leave us any comments or feedback. Some topics in here that you might want to weigh in on, or if you have questions about wholesaling or anything we've talked about, feel free to pop questions in. We also are both on Facebook. You can find us Mark Cool and Jasper Cool. You can reach out to us there, and hope everyone has a great and prosperous and successful week.